Imagine this: you are trapped in a room. The walls are closing in. You're panicking, pacing, trying to find the exit. But here's the twist: you're not trapped by walls. You're trapped by thoughts. And the key to freedom isn't hidden somewhere outside. It's already in your hand. You just haven't realized it yet.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
That's what this journey is about. We're going to confront something so familiar, yet so invisible, it runs our lives without us even noticing. You're thinking. That inner voice, that constant stream of judgment, prediction, memory, fear, comparison, it's not just a background noise. It's the architect of your suffering. And in the next few minutes, we're going to dismantle it, piece by piece, until you see what's underneath. And what's underneath? Peace. Freedom, presence. But first, we go into the storm. Let's start with a brutal truth. Most of your suffering isn't caused by what's happening. It's caused by what you think about what's happening. A breakup doesn't hurt because someone left. It hurts because of what your mind says it means. I'm not lovable. I'll be alone forever. I failed. Those thoughts are the real pain. Without them, it's just a change in circumstances. A traffic jam doesn't make you angry. Your thoughts about being late do. Your need for control, for things to go your way, for the world to obey your preferences, that's where the suffering begins. The Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But what if we go deeper? What you think, you feel. What you think, you suffer. And what you think, you can unlearn. That's the door we're opening here. But walking through it requires something most people never do: observing your thoughts without believing them. That's the beginning of liberation. Try this now. Step back from your mind. Watch a thought arise. Any thought. I'm tired. I need to do better. This isn't working. Doesn't matter what it is. Just notice that it came from nowhere, like a cloud drifting into the sky. You didn't choose it. You didn't create it. It just appeared. Now ask yourself, is this thought absolutely true? Can I be 100% certain it's real, not just a mental projection? If not, then why do we suffer for it like it's gospel? Most of your thoughts are recycled. They're echoes from your past, fears of your future, judgments from other people that you internalized without question. And yet you wear them like armor. You live by them like laws. But here's the twist that flips the game. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them, the space in which they appear. And that space, it's untouched by suffering. It's where peace lives. Now, this isn't about becoming thoughtless. That's a myth. You're not going to stop thinking. But you can stop mistaking thoughts for truth. That subtle shift is everything. It's the difference between being a prisoner and being free, between reacting and responding, between living unconsciously and living awake. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, who would you be without your story? Not your life story, your mind story. The one that says, I'm not enough, I'm too late, I messed up, they shouldn't have done that, I need this to be happy. Strip away those beliefs. Who's left? What's left? That's not nothing. That's everything. That's you. The real you, before the world told you who to be. The philosopher Epictetus said, People are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That's the Stoic way of saying your suffering is optional. Your pain? It's real, but your suffering. That's a story, and stories can be rewritten or completely dropped. Let me show you something wild. Let's say you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you. No apology, just walks off. Your mind might say, "How rude. People today have no manners. This ruined my day." You feel angry. But what if you found out that person just got a phone call that their child was in the hospital and they were rushing in a panic? Instantly, your suffering dissolves. Why? Because the meaning changed. And who gave the first meaning? Your mind. Now imagine doing that with every thought, every judgment, every belief. Questioning it, watching it, letting it pass. That's not passive. That's power. That's mastery. Because when you no longer believe every thought, you become unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because your mind gets quieter. Let's make it practical. Next time you feel triggered, angry, anxious, hopeless, don't escape it. Don't distract. Don't react. Just pause. Ask, what is my mind saying right now? And then ask, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? If it's none of those things, let it go. Not because you're weak, because you're wise. The more you do this, the more you see the patterns, the loops, the lies. You'll start to notice how your mind loves drama, how it creates problems just to stay busy, how it invents worst-case scenarios and replays conversations like broken records. And you'll laugh, because it's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? That we suffer so much because of a voice in our head that we didn't even choose. Here's something that might shock you. Your thoughts don't care about your happiness. They care about survival. That's their job, to scan for danger, to predict threats, and to control reality. But happiness? Peace? Freedom? That's not their concern. It has to come from you. From the awareness that sees the thoughts but doesn't become them. Think of your mind like a wild horse. If you don't train it, it will drag you through thorns, cliffs, and chaos. But if you learn to ride it, to guide it, it becomes powerful, even beautiful. That's the practice. Not to suppress the mind, but to master it. And how do you train it? Meditation, reflection, stillness, not sexy, not flashy, but revolutionary. When you sit in silence and just watch your thoughts, something magical happens. You stop being the thinker. You become the observer. And in that shift, suffering loses its grip. Let's go even further. What if I told you your deepest suffering comes from one core thought? This moment should be different. That's it. That's the root of almost all inner pain. This shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't act that way. I should be further along. One word, should. It's a war with reality. And guess what? Reality always wins. Byron Katie said, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. So the question is, are you willing to stop fighting what is? Not to give up, but to wake up. Because when you surrender to the present fully, deeply, without resistance, peace rushes in. Not because the world changed, but because your mind did. Now, let's take a breath. Let's ask the question that could rewrite your life. What would it feel like to live without believing every thought that passes through your mind? Just imagine that version of you, the one who sees thoughts as clouds, not commands, who doesn't take them personally, who lets them come and lets them go. That you is already within you, waiting, watching, ready. The only thing in the way is the belief that your thinking is the truth. It's not. It's just noise. Sometimes helpful, often not, but always temporary. And here's the secret. When you stop believing your thoughts, suffering starts to fade. Not overnight, but steadily, like fog lifting from a mountain. And what's left isn't a blank mind. It's a clear one. A mind that serves you, not enslaves you. A mind that reflects life instead of resisting it. You've been taught to overthink, overanalyze, over-identify with every mental movement. But what if your real power is in letting go? Not in controlling thoughts, but in seeing through them. What if the end of suffering isn't found in new thoughts, but in fewer? Now we arrive at the edge, the moment before something shifts. Are you ready to step beyond your mind? Not to escape it, but to transcend it, to see it clearly, to hold it lightly, to stop being its prisoner and become its master. Because here's the truth no one teaches you in school. Your thinking is the beginning of suffering. And your freedom begins the moment you stop believing it. Let's begin with something radical. What if everything you've ever labeled as bad, the heartbreak, the failure, the anxiety, the rejection, was never the true source of your suffering? What if it was only your thoughts about those things that created the pain? That might sound absurd at first, but look closer. Think of any painful experience. Now ask yourself, what part hurt more, the event itself, or the story your mind built around it afterward? The mind is a meaning-making machine. It cannot sit with raw experience. It instantly adds labels, judgments, narratives. And that's where suffering multiplies. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning, said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That space is where your freedom lives. But thinking wants to fill that space instantly with fear, assumptions, blame, or regret. So we must learn to widen that space, and to pause, to witness, to choose. Because if you don't choose your thoughts consciously, your conditioning will choose for you. And most of our conditioning wasn't built for peace, it was built for survival. That means it's reactive, defensive, and usually based on outdated fears. Those old survival-based thought patterns are still running the show. But the danger isn't real anymore. The suffering is self-created. Let's take an example. You send a message to someone, and they leave you unread. Instantly, the mind goes, they're ignoring me. I must have upset them. I'm not important. One small trigger, and the mind builds a castle of suffering on top of it. But none of it is real. It's all interpretation. And if you're not careful, you'll spend the entire day emotionally reacting to a thought, not a fact. Now imagine you had the awareness to pause, to say, wait, I don't know why they didn't respond. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're struggling. Maybe it's not about me at all. That shift in thinking changes everything. Not because the situation changed, but because you didn't let your mind hijack your peace. This is the art of self-inquiry, of not believing everything you think, because your thoughts are not neutral. They shape your emotions. Your emotions shape your actions. Your actions shape your life. So if you want to change your life, you start not with behavior, but with belief. And not with adding new beliefs, but questioning the ones already there. Let's go deeper into that questioning now. One of the most powerful tools for ending suffering is to take any painful thought and ask yourself, is it true? Then go further. Can I absolutely know it's true? Then, how do I react when I believe that thought? And finally, who would I be without this thought? These questions, inspired by Byron Katie's method of inquiry, are not intellectual exercises. They are doorways. They open you to a space beyond thought where peace was always waiting. Let's try it together. Take a thought like, I'm not good enough. Is it true? You might say yes, but can you absolutely know it's true? That you're not good enough in any dimension, for all people, across all time? No, that's impossible. How do you react when you believe it? You shrink, you hide, you self-sabotage. And who would you be without that thought? You'd be free, confident, aligned with who you truly are. So the question becomes, why do we keep believing thoughts that hurt us? Because the ego feeds on identity, even painful identity. If I believe I'm broken, I have a role, a story, a reason to seek comfort and validation. Letting go of that thought might mean facing the terrifying truth that I'm already whole. No more excuses, no more drama, just presence. And for the ego, that's death. That's why this work is hard. It's not just about feeling better. It's about dying to who you think you are and being reborn as who you truly are. That's the journey. And yes, it's frightening. But it's also the most beautiful thing you'll ever experience. Now, there's a deeper layer we haven't touched yet. Your thoughts don't just create suffering about the world. They create suffering about yourself. The deepest wounds are not about what others did. They're about what you came to believe about yourself because of what others did. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I'm not safe. Those aren't facts. They're thoughts, and they can be unlearned. But to unlearn them, we must go to the root. And the root is identification. The moment you say, I am this thought, you give it power. It's one thing to think, I failed. It's another to say, I am a failure. That shift from experience to identity is where suffering takes root. But here's the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them. And awareness is never broken. Let's pause for a moment and ask a question that could shake your foundation. If you had no thoughts about yourself, who would you be? No labels, no criticisms, no comparisons. Just presence, just being. That's not a void. That's your natural state before the mind took over. Eckhart Tolle calls this the pain body, the accumulation of emotional pain that lives in our thinking and gets triggered by life. It's like a parasite. It feeds on your thoughts, especially ones that reinforce your suffering. And it wants to survive, so it will keep pulling you into old narratives. But the moment you become aware of it, it starts to lose power. Because awareness is the one thing the pain body cannot survive. So how do we strengthen awareness? We practice daily, moment by moment. We observe the mind like a scientist, not a victim. We notice when we're getting pulled into a thought loop, and we gently return to the present, to the breath, to the body, to what's actually happening, not what the mind says is happening. Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about changing your relationship to them, seeing them as clouds, not commands, in letting them pass, returning to stillness. And from that stillness, wisdom arises. Not from thinking more, but from thinking less. Now, let's talk about control, because the mind loves control. It thinks, if I just think hard enough, I can solve everything. But most of your suffering comes from trying to control what you cannot. Other people, the future, the past, life itself. And when life doesn't match the mind's expectations, it suffers. But what if you stopped needing to control? What if you trusted life more than you trusted your thoughts about life? That's not passivity. That's alignment. That's surrender. Not giving up, but giving in to what is. And from that surrender, a new kind of power emerges. One that doesn't fight reality, but flows with it. The ancient Taoists knew this. Lao Tzu wrote, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means finally being free from the illusion that you were ever in control. And in that space, suffering begins to dissolve. So let's bring it home. You are not your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And the more you rest in that awareness, the less power suffering has over you. Because all suffering begins in thought, and all peace begins in presence. Now ask yourself, right now, what thoughts am I believing today that are not serving me? What would happen if I just let them go? Maybe your freedom isn't in doing more, or fixing more, or becoming more. Maybe your freedom is in thinking less. Let's drop into the deepest layer now, the one most people never reach. The part where the illusion of the mind is not just questioned, but fully seen through. Because here's the truth. If you can see that all suffering arises from thought, then you are already halfway free. But to go the rest of the way, you must not only observe it, you must disidentify from it completely. You must see your thoughts as shadows on a wall, not the light itself. Until then, you're living in a dream you mistake for reality. So let's wake up. Right now, as you listen, thoughts are still arising. Maybe you're agreeing. Maybe you're resisting. Maybe you're wondering how this applies to your situation. But all of that, every single one of those reactions is just thought. And here's the kicker. You don't need to stop them. You just need to stop believing them. The moment you stop fusing with them, they lose their grip. They no longer define you. They no longer dominate you. They just pass by, like clouds in an open sky. But the sky, that's you, the space, the awareness, the stillness underneath. When you live from that space, suffering cannot survive. Because suffering needs identity. It needs you to say, this shouldn't be happening to me, or I'll never get through this. But when there is no me to cling to, just the ever-changing present moment, what's left to suffer? That's the paradox. You don't have to fix your thoughts. You just have to stop mistaking them for truth. The moment you do, the entire architecture of suffering starts to collapse. And in that collapse, something extraordinary is revealed: peace. Not the peace of everything going right. The peace of not needing it to. The peace of being fully here, completely now. Let's go even further. The mind doesn't just create suffering, it also creates the illusion of time, of past and future. And in that illusion, anxiety is born. Regret is born. Fear is born. But none of it is real. The past is a memory. The future is a projection. Only the present exists. Only now is real. And yet your mind lives almost entirely in non-reality. You replay conversations that ended years ago. You worry about things that haven't happened and may never happen. And in doing so, you miss life. You miss joy. You miss freedom. All because of thoughts. Thoughts about time. Thoughts about yourself. Thoughts about how things should be. But what if you stopped? What if you dropped every thought that wasn't happening right now? Try it. Just for a moment. Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the story. What's left? Not emptiness. Not boredom. Aliveness. Peace. Clarity. You. The real you. Ramana Maharshi, one of the great sages of India, said, "Your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world." That's what we're pointing to. Not self in the egoic sense, but self as awareness, as being, the space in which everything comes and goes, including suffering. And when you live from that place, you start to see everything differently. Even pain, even loss, even death. They're no longer seen as enemies. They are part of the dance, part of the flow, part of the impermanence that makes life so sacred. You stop resisting, you stop clinging. And the suffering that was once constant begins to fade, not because life stopped hurting, but because you stopped adding mental pain on top of it. Here's a question that can shatter your mind's illusion. If I didn't have a single thought about my life, would I still be suffering? Sit with that. Really sit with it. Because the answer reveals everything. Suffering is not in life. It's in your interpretation of life. And interpretation is just thought. You might say, but what about trauma? What about real pain? And yes, pain exists. Physical, emotional, psychological. Pain is part of being human. But suffering is different. Suffering is the added resistance, the refusal, the story. Pain says, I'm hurting. Suffering says, this shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. This is unfair. One is natural. The other is mental. And the mind, in its desperation to control, clings to suffering like a badge. It says, if I suffer enough, someone will see me. If I hold on to this story, I'll stay safe. If I never forgive, I'll never be hurt again. But none of that is true. Holding on only deepens the wound. Only awareness heals it. Awareness is the light that dissolves the shadow of the mind. So how do you live this? You practice. You train your attention. You develop the courage to be present with what is, without needing to change it. You catch the mind when it spins stories, and you gently say, thank you for trying to protect me. but I'm choosing peace now. You learn to rest in yourself, not your thoughts. And slowly, a new way of being is born. In that way of being, everything changes. You stop taking things personally. You stop needing to control others. You stop fearing the future. You start trusting life. Not because it always gives you what you want, but because you're no longer demanding that it does. You've let go of the mental grip, and in that release, real freedom begins. Let's return to the title, Why Your Thinking is the Beginning End of Suffering. Now you see it. Thinking creates a false self, a false world, a false war, and suffering is its child. But when thinking is seen for what it is, just a tool, not a truth, it loses its power. It returns to its rightful place, and the suffering it once created dissolves. The end of suffering isn't a destination. It's a shift from identification to observation, from reaction to presence, from mind to being. And the beautiful thing is, you can make that shift at any moment. Right now, even as you listen, just become aware of the breath, of the body, of the space between thoughts. That's it. That's the doorway. Let's leave you with a final question. One that could unlock everything. If you never believed another thought again, who would you become? That is the real you. Always here, always free.